Okay, I said wait, but it's okay. Hello everyone, and welcome to our November meetup. We have two amazing speakers. I'm gonna tell you a bit more about them in a while. And welcome. This is our 8th online meetup. We have some announcements. I would like to let you know that we're still going ahead with CityJS conference on the 26th of March 2021. It's a hybrid event depending on the conditions of the current situation. We're going to decide if it's going to be just online or if it's going to be in a venue. We have an announcement. I have some tickets to offer for the International JavaScript Conference that's happening on the 19th of April, between 19 and 22nd of April, 2021. You can access the more information about this event on this URL. And we are also giving you 15% off with this code. It's from also another fellow meetup, the London Node user group, but we are saying the same code. We're looking for new faces and new people to help us to make our meetup better and to get more out of our meetup. If you are happy to join our meetup in the leadership team, you can send us an email at jsmonthlylondon@gmail.com. I'm going to share this in the chat. And I'm going to pass you now to our first speaker, Abby. She's going to be talking about what the heck is ECMA. And I will pass you to Abby. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming along to this talk. I'm going to be going through what the heck-ma is ECMA. I apologize for my bad puns, and I can neither confirm nor deny that that will be the last one that you'll hear this evening. So I don't know what kind of level you guys who are watching this talk are at in terms of your journey into JavaScript. So I hope that this talk will kind of cater to a range of different experience levels. And really, this is a talk to kind of get you guys familiar with the concept of ECMAScript and what it means in relation to JavaScript. I think if you have started using JavaScript, you're probably, like me, when I first started, get quite confused when you go on Stack Overflow and people are using random combinations of years and letters and numbers and ES5 or 6 or ES 2015, and it can get a bit confusing and you might think, what has this got to do with JavaScript? So hopefully I'm going to help clear some of that confusion up today. So firstly, let's talk about what is ECMAScript. ECMAScript and JavaScript are the same, except when we talk about ECMAScript, what we're really talking about is the official specification of the coding language that is JavaScript. And JavaScript is the term we use kind of more colloquially, whereas ECMAScript we use, or ES, which is shortened to ES, we use when we're trying to refer to a specific version. JavaScript and coding languages are, the same as human languages in the fact that they evolve over time. They don't stay static. And with something like JavaScript, it's evolving at quite a fast pace. And nowadays we get so I'll give you a bit about the history of how the language has evolved. So the reason it's called ECMAScript is that the ECMA International is the kind of the international committee that decides what features are going to go into each version of JavaScript. The first kind of standard for the language was published in 1997, and then that was officially ES1. And then over the next kind of decade or so, there were a few different releases, ES2, 3, 4, 5, and that was when in 2009 ES5 came out, and that's probably the most, that was a pretty big release. There was a lot of new features into that. And then since then, they didn't do very much until 2015 when ES6 was released. And this was a pretty big year because in 2015, from then onwards, they decided that instead of doing kind of intermittent releases, they were going to start doing releases every single year. At which point it gets a bit confusing to keep naming things like ES6, 7, 8, 9. So from 2015 onwards, you'll start seeing more common names named after the year that it was released. And that's kind of the official name of that version is ES followed by the year name. Although some people will still use ES6 to mean ES 2015 and ES7 to mean 2016. You know, whatever floats your boat, really. If you want to know why it's called ECMAScript, really, and not JavaScript 2015 or JS 2015, it's the short answer is a copyright thing. ECMA International doesn't actually own the trademark name JavaScript. I think it's owned by a company called Oracle, actually. And so they can't call their standards JS 2015 or JS 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So I don't have a huge amount of time, so I don't want to kind of go down into a huge amount of detail about each individual version of JavaScript since, you know, the dawn of time. But I will try and highlight just some of the key differences between the versions and how they kind of relate to what you will be seeing in the browser and things like that. So I'll start with ES5. That was released in 2009. And the biggest things that came out of that release was we basically got a whole load of funky array functions. And I probably only got started with JavaScript kind of, you know, I'm a millennial, so I got started only, you know, fairly recently in JavaScript in comparison. So to me, I find it, you know, just really strange that these kind of functions that I use every day in my job didn't exist, you know, pre-2009. And, you know, one of the things that I really enjoy about JavaScript is the fact that you can, you know, you don't have to write really bespoke for loops or anything. You can use these handy array functions like map and filter and things like that. Yeah, so that was kind of these are the big releases that came out of the ES5. And then after that, there wasn't much until there wasn't the next big release was ES 2015, ES6. And this is where you'll kind of see a lot online of, you know, chatter about the differences between ES5 and ES6, because previously the kind of each change in version wasn't drastically different, but you did get a big shift from when you move from ES5 to ES6. And we start getting, again, it was a big release and you have quite a lot of different things that came out of that. I don't want this to be a really boring talk where you just stare at, you know, lists on PowerPoint. So I will try and, I have kind of put together a little bit of a demo for you. I'll try and kind of go over some of the key features of the different ECMAScript versions since ES5 onwards. I'll kind of just try and highlight the differences between them, really. So the big difference that I want to start with between ES5 and ES6 is you may or may not be familiar with in ES5 when you want to kind of import modules into your code, you would declare them in this kind of format. And then from ES6 onwards, you have you have more of this style where you can import just straight like that, and you can do kind of import asterisks from the file name if you want. And similarly, you also have slightly different formats for exports as well. So in something like ES5, you had a file that was written in ES5, you would export your functions or variables and things using module.exports. Whereas in something like ES6, you can just kind of go straight away and export something a bit like just straight there from next to the function. So that's kind of the imports and export side of things. With ES6, you also got some new, you got some other new features, like you got let and const. For those of you that don't know the difference, I don't want to do a deep dive into the specifics of JavaScript, but just a quick overview. If you kind of declare something using let, it means that you can reassign it later. So here we said Yoda, my name Yoda is, and if you want to translate that, you can reassign the value of what Yoda is and it won't complain. Whereas if you declare it as a constant, you will get an error saying that you've tried to assign something to a constant variable. You may notice that I have been watching the new season of The Mandalorian this week, so you'll probably see a lot of Star Wars references in this demo. Just a heads up on that. What else did you get in ES6? We also get classes. So actually, one of my colleagues that today was talking to me, she's very keen on Java, and she was saying how JavaScript is now trying to be like Java, and Java is trying to be like JavaScript. And I think you can kind of see that in the different versions of the languages that are being released. So in ES6, we got classes, which are very similar to what you would get in object-oriented programming languages like Java, where you can create a whole class of something, and then it kind of makes it easier to create new instances of that class. So here we can console log out the characters that we've created here, and you can see it comes up in the console as an object of class character. And that kind of suits people that prefer a more kind of class-based programming rather than just functional based. Yeah, and then we also, the big addition in ES6 was promises. You could spend a whole meetup session explaining promises, so I'm not going to do that, but here's just something for you to look at. If you're not familiar with what a promise is, you can resolve or reject the result of a promise, and you can chain promises together using .then. That was what was included in the release of promises in ES6. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main things that I wanted to show you in the ES6 version. You also got a few other more obscure things. You can find full details of these on websites like W3 Schools or MDN and that kind of thing as well. So moving on to, since ES6 was probably the biggest release in the past kind of 5 years or so, and since then, like each year they have done a release, but they've been kind of smaller and they've had a fewer things, so I'll try and kind of, for the sake of time, bunch them together. So key features that came in ES 2016 and ES 2017, we get exponentiation, whereas previously you would have to kind of, actually I think I have an example for you here. Yeah, so previously in prior versions of JavaScript, you would have to do something like math.pow in order to kind of do an exponent, whereas now, since ES 2016, it's just a lot easier, kind of similar to Python syntax. You just do the double asterisks. And this is a good thing to highlight as well at this point, is ECMAScript JavaScript is completely backwards compatible. So if you still like your old-fashioned version of JavaScript, then you can, still use that to your heart's content. it also is really, and it won't, interfere. You can have a file which has a mixture of the newer versions and the older versions, and it's fine. That also means if you have a kind of an older JavaScript project, you don't need to feel like every time a new version releases, you don't have to go back and rewrite everything, which is also nice. Any other? So another nice function we got in ES 2016 was another handy array function includes. So you can kind of search a long array, and if it will return true or false based on whether it finds the object, the string or object that you're looking for, which is quite handy. So those were in fact, that was the only stuff that came out in ES7. That was a bit of a lazy year for them. For ES 2017, we get, we kind of get some more object functions. We also get the biggest one that we get in, the biggest one that we get in ES 2017 is the ability to do async functions. So this is when you're, as we saw in ES6, when you're creating promises, normally if you want to kind of chain different things together, you have to do a dot then, and then you want to wait for your promise to resolve or reject, and then move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. With ES 2017, we get the async and await, which I personally really like to use a lot, because that means I don't have to have long chains of dot then, dot then, dot then, dot then. I can just kind of wait for the promise to complete, and then the next line won't execute until that the result of that promise has come back. So that's really handy. Some people have very strong opinions about whether they like dot then or the async await format. I think it's a bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. I won't try and tell you which one is better. I'll let you make your own minds up. All right. So how are we doing for time? Okay, try and speed through a bit. So then ES 2018 and 2019, what do we get here? We got a few more things. ES 2018, we get the most interesting stuff, I think, about ES 2018 is we get dot finally, the spread operator. We also get a few regular expressions, functions as well. Let's see if I'll show you a demo. So spread operators, honestly, is probably my favorite of the newer JavaScript functions. I use it all the time, especially if you're doing React and you're trying to update state, it kind of just saves you a lot of time. For those of you who aren't familiar with spread operators, this is just a quick example. For example, you have an object called spaceship, and it has a name, pilot, and co-pilot. Key value pairs. Say you want to create a new spaceship, and it's going to be exactly the same as your old spaceship, but you just want a new pilot. You don't have to kind of rewrite every single line. You can just use the spread operator to say, I want everything that was in spaceship except pilot, which I'm going to reassign. And then you can see here, you have spaceship and your new spaceship. They contain exactly the same attributes, key value pairs, but just with the one change that you wanted. I use this one all the time because I like to be efficient, and it just saves me time and energy, and it's great. What else did we get in 2018? We get dot finally. So this is, again, with promises. If you have a long chain of promises and you want to specify something that's going to happen way at the end, after all the thens, after the catch, then you can add dot finally. So for example, in our promise here, we have, if our promise resolves, then we can say we want to do something else. We might want to catch the error. And then only once everything else has been completed, then we have finally, we can do whatever we want in this dot finally section. And then moving on to ES 2019, we get another few kind of helpful array functions. We get some string functions as well. Sorry. I'll just demo a few of them quickly. So dot flat is just if you have nested arrays, you can flatten them, kind of the clues in the name. Also, if you have, for example, arrays within arrays within arrays, you can also chain your dot flat to kind of flatten it as many times as you need, which is really nice. Optional catch binding, we got that as well. So that's previously, for example, if you see in our promise here, if you want to catch an error, you have to pass an argument, normally which is the error itself. From ES 2019 onwards, you don't need to do that anymore. You can just have a catch without any parameter passed in, which is really nice. And then one of the most random ones that I found added, which I don't know, just entertains me. If you really want to, you can, since ES 2019 came out, you can just convert any random function to a string if you want to. And it will, for example, here, I've just created a simple function. And if I wanted to console log it out, I could console log it out. I have no idea why you would ever want to use this function. Maybe someone who knows JavaScript better than me can tell me what use I have for this, but I just thought it was funky and I wanted to share that with you all today. I didn't know that this existed before I did the research for this talk. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you today. And then what else do we get? Right, okay, we're on the home stretch, guys. We're almost up to the present day. ES 2020, we get some things, some mathematical things. Big int basically means that JavaScript can now deal with really big integers, whereas before it could only deal with slightly less big integers. We get dynamic imports and optional chaining, a bunch of other just kind of random assortment of helpful things. Another promise function there. And in ES 2021, I won't show you this because it's been unreleased. We're going to get some really cool stuff. Another array function for replace all, which is where you can just, for example, if you had a long string, you could just do replace all and then replace any substrings within that string that you want. So if you had something that said, dogs are the best, I love dogs, you could do replace all with cats and then replace that all with cats. Promise.any is another, I won't go into a lot of details, I don't want to make this all about promises. Basically, there's a lot of cool things that you get with every version of JavaScript, and the best place if you want to know what is coming is to look at the online docs. Things like W3 Schools does really good resources on this. So does MDN web docs as well. You'll find loads of people writing blog posts about what's coming next. The one thing that I do want to highlight before I run out of time is if you ever see the term ES Next, that's kind of colloquial term for whatever is the next version of ECMAScript. So whatever one is not currently released right now. And then browser compatibility, that's a really important thing to take into account. So currently, the browsers always kind of update slower than their language does. And they don't always necessarily release an update of a browser which has the compatibility, which has all of the features of the next version of ECMAScript. And that can cause issues when you're writing your code. You can have errors in something that might work in Chrome might not work in Firefox, depending on what the feature is of the specific version that you're trying to use. And that can be really important to make sure that that whatever code you're writing, if it's going to be run in the browser, like make sure that it's accessible to people that are using different browsers. You can either kind of, again, check the documentation. There's a really good website called Can I Use, which if you want to use a funky array method that you don't know is in the current version of JavaScript that's supported on Safari, then you can use the Can I Use website to check if that function is supported. Or you could just use transpilers like Babel or Webpack. If you don't know what a transpiler is, essentially what that does is it just kind of, if you have a project and you're using a mixture of all different types of JavaScript versions, then you can use something like Babel or Webpack to essentially just translate any later version you're using back down to an earlier version that will be supported in the browsers that you want to run your code in. So that's really useful. And this is stuff that you should definitely think about whenever you're trying to develop anything that's going to be used by people on the web, because you never know, there's probably someone's grandma somewhere who is still using Internet Explorer and so will not, be able to read your website if you haven't, properly considered that. Really last quick thing is ECMAScript is an open standard. Fun fact, we call any languages that are open source, we call them open standards. Only projects or source code can be referred to as open source. So when we say that something like a language is available for you to look at online and contribute to, we call it an open standard. And ECMAScript is one of those open standards. So if you really want to see a certain feature in the next version of JavaScript, you can go to their GitHub. You can have a look through what's coming. You can look up how to contribute. You can see all the proposals that are going to go into the next version of ECMAScript. Yeah, and you can even see which versions are kind of at different stages in the approval process. Stage 4 means that it's 100% definitely going in the next version. And then there's kind of different tiers of approval for different things. So if you're looking to, if you're just curious or you want to get more involved in open source, this is definitely a nice place to have a poke around. It's very well kind of structured and put together, and everything is reviewed by committee. So yeah, I think that was kind of, is that the last thing I have to show with you? Yes, I do. We did it. And I kind of was on time, which is great. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. And I hope that you all learned something new.
Thank you, Abby. And that was a very interesting talk, especially for people that start learning JavaScript. I have some questions. First, what are the difference between ES6 and ES5 function constructors?
ES6 and ES5 what, sorry?
Function constructors.
Function constructors?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I was rushing for time, so I probably didn't explain that very well, and I might have even missed it completely. Maybe I can share my screen again and I can give a quick little demo on that.
Yes, why not?
Sure, hold on bear with me one sec. Yeah, so the question was between ES5 and ES6, right? So yeah, I think I probably glossed over this or potentially just missed it out completely because I was rushing. But in ES6, one of the big new additions you get is the use of arrow functions, which is kind of this type of format. Whereas in ES5, you normally get things which are a bit more, which look like this. You get function, my function, blah, 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 and then the curly brackets. Whereas in ES6, you can just go straight for this kind of parentheses with a little, they're called arrow functions because you have an arrow here. And both of them work completely fine. They kind of do essentially the same thing. I think that the arrow functions are particularly useful because in JavaScript you do a lot of passing functions to other functions. So when you're doing that, it becomes it's more readable to just pass something simply like this, and then you can put in kind of a parameter in there rather than having to go through the whole function, my function with this kind of format. It's just slightly more readable when you're passing them between functions.
Yep, that's great. Which one do you prefer?
Which one do I prefer?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lazy, so I want to write the most efficient code as quickly as possible. So I probably do arrow functions more. And if I have to type the whole word function out, that's just too much effort for me.
Did it change your life when you started using these kind of arrow functions? Was it different?
Well, so I'm going to show my youth by answering this, but I only started learning JavaScript when arrow functions already existed. So I kind of went straight into the ES6 versions of things. So I'm probably more biased towards the newer things.
That's great. Yeah, it's a new world, I think, from ES5 to ES6. And then there's one more question. If I only learn ES6, is there any point in me going back to ES5 and ES 2015?
Yes, absolutely. I guess you need to think of it not as necessarily once the new version comes along, the old version is completely irrelevant, because it's more of a kind of building on top of what came before. So sometimes you'll get a new option for how to write something like a function, but sometimes, the array functions like .map and for each, those, haven't really, I still use them every single day, and they haven't been replaced by anything, because it's kind of, they're good as what they are, and we haven't replaced it with anything better. So there's definitely, use whatever you find is the most intuitive to make your code work and look readable and usable.
Yeah, definitely. We had a talk back in 2 years ago at CTJS about the syntactic sugar and how this would potentially create diabetes. That's a joke. Yeah, so you have to still know the previous stuff plus the new one, so you cannot really avoid using the old stuff. The next question: when should we destructure alignments in ES6?
Sorry, what was that?
When should we destructure assignments in ES6? When do you find it appropriate to use destructuring in ES6? Where do you find it helpful?
Sorry, what do you mean by destructuring?
So when you are having an object and you have to destructure it, sometimes, it's another part of ES6 where instead of having like to do always that dot, we can use destructuring.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. Sure. So I guess, you use it whenever you feel like, whenever you feel like it's most useful to you. As with anything in JavaScript, it's kind of up to you how you want to use it the best. Like, I'm not the kind of person that believes on, oh, these are all of the times when you should use this exact method, and any other way is just ridiculous. Like, why would you do that? I think, it's ultimately whatever helps you write code that is effective and will help, and other people can read it. I think that's fine, but maybe I'm just not a JavaScript purist.
It's like a toolkit, basically. So you get your tools and you're using them whenever you have to use them. So you just need to know.
Exactly, right? Yeah, and I think one of the great things about the fact that we are getting, we get a new version, we get a new ECMAScript version every year, and you're constantly getting new tools to add to that toolbox. But at the end of the day, it's kind of up to you how you use them. And then obviously there's kind of some things which are considered best practice, but I think it's, coding is also a creative discipline, and you have the freedom to use whatever you find the easiest as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but sometimes you have to avoid the callback hell. How do you go about it?
Sorry, how do I feel?
There's one more question. It says, how can you prevent a so-called callback hell? How
How
do
can
you
I
go
prevent
about it?
callback hell? Gosh, I don't have a good answer to that question.
But it's like the sync and wait and all these promises that we
I
stop using the callbacks, isn't it that?
guess,
That's what they refer to.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's always good to kind of go back and
Right.
rewrite your code. If you are getting into that callback hell, then maybe it's because you haven't set your what you're writing up in a way that is possibly the best way of doing it. If you are getting into a situation where you feel like you're in callback hell, probably best to kind of evaluate what happened in your life to make you get to that point, and then see if you can go back and kind of change the way that you approach the problem and fix it, and maybe rewrite some things and fix it from the start.
And I'm going to ask you one more question from the audience. Sarah K in our YouTube live stream. She's asking, do I need to ensure my linter is aware of the ECMA version I'm using in my project?
That is a good question. Make sure that your linter is aware of what ECMAScript version. I think it depends on the linter that you use. I'm not actually sure about that. I think they probably have a default already set for like probably, ES5 or 6, and it's probably customizable beyond that. But then again, like linters themselves are very customizable, so I can't answer that for all linters. And yeah, I'd say do some research into what is available for the specific linter that you're using.
Oh, thank you very much. And I think we're going to go to the next speaker. If there are any other questions, would you mind answering them on our YouTube channel in the live stream?
Sure.
That's great.
I'll do my best.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Hey guys. So Thank you for your presentation here. And my name is Italo, and today we will talk about computer vision. And to start this talk, I would like to introduce me. So my name is Italo. I'm Developer Circle organizer. Developer Circle is a community from Facebook, and it's a global community. I'm to Microsoft most professional from Microsoft, and I work as a solution architect at Vortex. It's a fintech. So today we will talk about computer vision, but to start, I want to talk about what isn't computer vision. Okay, computer vision is not deep learn, not necessarily deep learn and detect objects and use machine learn and some things like that. And computer vision is more you get an image and process it, you know? So for example, you have three big areas inside computer vision. That is image processing, that is get an image and transform it for an image. You have the computer vision, that is get an image and transform it for a symbol, for example, an information, get information from an image. And here we don't using deep learning or machine learning or something like this, okay? We just using the classical computer vision, and when we got an image and extract some information for this image, we are using computer vision, okay? And we have the computer graphics that is got a symbol, got a mathematical formula, get input, and with this input, transform it in an image. Okay, and it's easy to confuse some of these terms because they are so much together, but we have this difference, and it's important to know when you are just searching something in the Google for studying and something like this terms is important. But what do you have inside computer vision? What we can do with computer vision when we don't using deep learning, you know? So here we have some examples. For example, credit card, we can learn an image and we can get some information about an image like this cat. And for example, these informations that you got from computer vision, you can use it to improve a deep learning model. And we have here too a mouth counter, a hand counter, you know, and everything here done using deep learning. And when I talk about don't use deep learn, it's not necessarily the deep learn is a bad thing, you know. But sometimes you can't use deep learn because you have a short time to develop a feature, or you need just to develop experimental software for some customer, and you don't have data, you don't have time, you don't have GPUs to process a deep learning model fast. So for solution this problem, you can use classical computer vision, you know. And another thing the computer vision without deep learning you can do is, for example, this project. This project is a slam. Okay, this slam is a software to detect the movements by the camera, and with that series times construct a path, you know. So it's for me it's the most powerful usage of computer vision that we don't use deep learning, and it's showed the whole powerful is classical computer vision. And to, for our demo, we use the OpenCV. OpenCV is a library. It's a library powered by Intel, and this library original is built in C++, but we have some bindings for Python, for node.js, for C#, and today we use OpenCV for node.js. Okay, so show me the code. Here I have a code, and when I execute this code, I have this result. I have some stats. Oh, sorry about that, but the application, the Windows is spamming in my another monitor, you know. So we have so much steps of processing image. So in the final, we can got a contour of our document. This is a Brazilian document, okay? So, and for this problem, we want to get an image, this image, and extract the document. But I don't have time, I don't have money for GPU, I don't have know-how about deep learning, but I need to do it. I need to extract this document from this image. How I can do it in a fast way? I can use classical computer vision. And as I said, to do it, we use the OpenCV for Node.js. So OpenCV for Node.js is a library that implements the C++ binds. Okay, it's a community library, and as you can see in the documentation, we have so much thing already do it. So just implement it and use these features. Okay, but for this demo, we will see how we can do it. We can do it without any already did it feature. Okay, so the first thing is request. Okay, the Node.js for the OpenCV for Node.js. So after that, we just we read an image, and when we read the image, we got a matrix, and this matrix we can do what we want. So we got this image and sent to method process frame. This method process frame, we start to do something like Photoshop, you know. So I have a problem that is detect document in my image. So first everything, I need to detect a pattern, you know, and the first pattern, as you can see here, is this document is green. All document is green. So if I extract only green color, I can get only the document session, you know. So in my index.js, I do exactly it. So I create a mask by color. In this method, I just transform my image that is RGB to HSV. HSV, it's a color schema that we have our color, our saturation, and the intensity, how much how much darker or clearer is our image, you know? So when you make this transformation, we just select our color by an range. These two colors here, I'm just defining here in setting 6080 line. So I set RGB color, okay? So I define how much is the range that I want to filter this image. So when I do this mask, I show it as I already showed it before for you. So when I create this mask will be a little bit sharp, you know? As you can see here, we have so much noise in this image. We can't extract only the document here. So how we can remove this noise? So I can, for example, blur this mask. When I blur this mask, I just remove some little noise piece of my image. For example, as you can see here, we have a sharpened, super noisy image. And here we have a cleaner image. As you can see, for example, some some blank pieces here or here, some points here. We don't have it here, as you can see. So to do that, to blur an image, we can just ask for the OpenCV to blur our image, passing a size, and this size is like a convolution, you know. So the blur method will got 10 pixels by 10 pixels, and will multiply all these colors, and we'll got a blurred image, blurred piece. And this window will will be replaced by all the image, by all the pixels. So after that, after I got my blurred image, I just sharpened it again, because as you can see, I have a blurred image and I can't detect a rectangle, you know, because it's a blurred image and I don't know where it starts and where it's finished. So to do that, I just, when I just sharpened it, you can see that I can just select my document, and I know exactly where my document starts and where my document finishes, you know. And we have, okay, we have some noises here, but to avoid this noise, we can just choose the biggest contour. So, for example, here we have an object, another object, a big object. Here we have another object. And to filter all these little objects, I can just choose the biggest one. Okay, so, and to do that, in my get biggest contour, I just call the method find contours, passing as parameter head external. So I want to contour the external of my objects, and I would like to do a simple chain. I would like this contour is closed, you know, and so after that, I will got so much contour. I will got a one contour for each object inside my mask. So I just sort it and get the biggest one. After that, after get to the biggest contour, I need to draw where my document is, you know. So I just create a method to do it too. So I just define the perimeter of my mask. So after that, I ask for OpenCV to return me the points where this contour is, you know. So I will got here in points. I will got array, and this array is filled with so much points and with x and y of my image. So after that, I can just draw it, passing my points, pass how much is the thickness of my line, the color of my line, and if I want to close or not my contour, you know. So after that, I can get my result. And the benefits of this is like I already said before. Sometimes when you don't have time to do some prototype or something like this, you can use the OpenCV and classical computer vision to build these products. For example, here we can, here I 2 years ago, I have a problem that is to detect this document that you can see here. It's a card ID from here, Brazil, and another type of card ID that was blue. So we got a card ID, a green card ID, and a blue card ID. So I didn't need to develop a big and complex model using deep learn to detect these two objects inside my image. I just use classical computer vision, and as you can see, this code, it's a simple code, it's not a complex code. So with it I just built an application that extract these two images, and extracting these two images, I can work in more technicals inside it. For example, to got my card ID number, or verify if this session of my image has some data that I need, So the message here is you don't need deep learn. You can use simple classical computer vision. And I mean, I guess I will be a little bit faster. Sorry about that. But we got to the end, and thank you very much. If you have some questions on something like this.
Hello, Italo. How are you?
Hey everyone, I'm fine. I'm a little bit electrical, so I was a little bit fast.
No,
But
no worries
okay.
about it. Probably we can ask a lot of questions and learn more from you. The first question is, what is the most exciting project you have been able to build with OpenCV? Can you give us some examples?
Okay. So with OpenCV was person tracking. So in computer vision, we have some technicals to, for example, extract the front objects. The objects is from the camera and ignore the background. So with this, you can, for example, got the difference from two frames. So when you got the difference between two frames, you can detect what are moving, and you can just tracking this movement object, or you can just delete this object. And deleting this object, you can have only the clean background. So imagine you have a video and so much people passing in a tourist place, and you want a perfect photography from this place with any one person in front of your picture. So using computer vision and OpenCV, I built a project that compared the frames and tracking the different pixels, and the different pixels is equals the movement objects, and these objects was the people. And I just removed these different pixels, and I was merging the the photograph that has the same piece of image in the video. So in the final, I have a unique picture with only the place of this touristic picture, and with any one person inside this image. You know. It was a cool project that I built. Another project, another interesting project was, as I show it here, was the Islam. Islam, for me, is my favorite algorithm. Islam, here we, as you can see here, we detect some key points from our image. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so my favorite algorithm in computer vision is the Islam, and I built it in my in a hackathon in the China, where I built a self-driving car there, and we used the Islam to detect the movement of the car just using computer vision. So here we got the key points from image, and we compare this key point with the next image, you know, and comparing these key points with the next image, the same key point, we can verify the distance between first frame and second frame. So with this, we can got the camera movement. And when you do it in so much frames by so much seconds, you can get exactly movement of the camera. So everything use only computer vision and classical computer vision. And for me, it's my favorite project. This GIF is not about my project, okay? Because my project was only code. It's not a visible project, but for me, it's Islam is awesome.
Really amazing. Is there something from this that you used during your presentation at CityJS? Is there any relative thing?
Sorry.
During CityJS, you did do some really amazing stuff. Are there any stuff that you did today that you showed us today that they have any connection to it? Because
Uh, some connection with City.js.
yeah, the talk that you did during the CityJS.
Oh, sure. Let me remember what I talked in CSJS.
No, but more about machine learning and you're moving your hands. Do you remember that really amazing?
Oh yeah, sure. No, there I was using the deep learning, but there I was using a pre-built deep learning model, and the difference there and here is there I was segmenting my body, and I used a pre-built model. So the Facebook has trained uh, a deep learning model, you know. So I used a library to got this information from my body, segment my body, detect where is my hand, detect where is my head, and here I'm not using the deep learning. I'm using just classical computer vision and classical image processing, and it's different because in deep learn, the deep learn is a hype, you know, and deep learn is awesome too, but sometimes we can't use deep learn. But it's if you can't use deep learn, don't stop your project. Don't forget it. Don't forget your project. You can build your project in a simplest way and using classical computer vision. And classical computer vision is super powerful, and some developers ignore the classical computer vision because we have deep learn today. But as I say it, sometimes you can use the deep learn, so you need to know computer vision. And the difference between their talk and this talk is there I was using deep learn, here I'm not in using deep learn, you know.
Okay, that's good. And the talk is online, so if people want to watch it, it's on the same Pusher channel, and we broadcast this talk twice because it was quite interesting. But yeah, you can go. You can go to the pusher channel and watch it. There is one more question. Is there anything you've seen that you want to recreate with OpenCV? Anything most exciting that you would like to recreate it?
Okay, something that I want to create.
To recreate something you have seen and it's very exciting, and you would like to recreate it with OpenCV.
That I created before.
Yeah, you created before and you liked it so much that you would go back again and do it.
Okay, this one it was my favorite project that I had built. And as I said, this GIF is not about my code, because my code don't have a image. You know, it's not visible. It's only code. But this one for me was the most cool project that I built in my life using just computer vision. And after that is using computer vision to detect to work with card IDs. Here in Brazil, we have so much problem with card IDs, and we need to detect if this card IDs is not false and something like this. So I have so much jobs with this project, and I just most parts of this project I use only computer vision, because it's faster, it's cheapest, and we have the same result, you know.
That's amazing. Have you found anything that you feel like it needs to be improved in OpenCV?
Something to improve in OpenCV is, I guess, is the performance, because but it's not about the OpenCV, it's about the computer vision, because the sometimes if you don't know so much about uh, code complexity, you can make some mistakes. And as you are working with metrics, when you, for example, work with loops inside your image, you got a bad performance. And it's in the deep learn have a it's better, because in the deep learn you don't will have this problem. And the difference between the principal problem between computer vision and uh, deep learn is the in the computer vision you need to pay attention about performance, you know. So uh, I don't have a specific thing about OpenCV, but I have, because it's just a framework, you know. Computer vision is computer vision. You using OpenCV or not? And I believe the computer vision have this downside, that is the performance. It's not less performant, but you need to pay attention about it, you know.
Yeah, I think Abby has also a question for us, for you, basically.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Firstly, great talk. It was super interesting. I was just wondering, because I know that people don't normally think of JavaScript as a language for doing computer vision with. So I was just wondering, did you start learning computer vision with JavaScript, or did you start with a different language and then figure out how to do it with Java?
Okay, this is an awesome question. So I started studying computer vision using Python, because the community is super strong. But as OpenCV is built in C++, the code, the binds is super similar from C++. So when you got a Python OpenCV and got a Node.js OpenCV, it's super similar. So I know today we don't have so much content about computer vision with Node.js, with JavaScript, and we don't have a big community using computer vision in JavaScript. And I started with computer vision using Python. But if you want if you don't code in Python and you want to know more about computer vision and you don't find some content and some a nice content about this topic using JavaScript, you can got a Python code and translate it for JavaScript because it's the same methods, it's the same terms, this JavaScript and the OpenCV in JavaScript and OpenCV Python work in the same way. It's more, for me, it's the most compatible framework between two different binds, you know? So, is study computer vision in JS, but if you have some question, you can just read a Python code and use the same method and the same logic, and it will work.
Are the functions in between JavaScript and Python the same? They differ.
Error functions, no, but when you are using a framework, you don't will use array function, you know, because array functions is, as we said before, as we saw in the previous talk, it's you use only when you create it. But when you are using a library, you don't will call our function um, as a declaration. You know, it's just a method. It's equal your work with a method, a function or something like this.
I think there's another question from the YouTube live stream. It's from someone called Matt. They say, what's your workflow to figure out the algorithm for a particular problem? Do you, for example, play around with the image in Photoshop to start with?
Okay, I would like to compare with Photoshop because for me, when I was starting with these problems, is a thing that helped me how I can think to choose the better implementation. But the first thing is detect the pattern. For example, in my document, my Brazilian card ID, I have the first pattern that this is a rectangle. The second and more important pattern that this is green. So, for example, how I can detect forms. So I will search about detect forms because I need to detect a rectangle. And so I find a contour. Okay, awesome. The get the contours is a method to find geometric forms. Awesome. So I just try it, but it's not enough to detect my rectangle in my image because as you can see here, I will share my screen again and I will execute my script. As you can see here, I don't have exactly rectangle here because I have a hand in front of my document. And this will don't will help me to detect this rectangle. So how can I filter this rectangle first to just to detect this rectangle. So I can work with the second pattern that is it's green. So hey, how can I filter colors? So I just searched how can I filter colors with OpenCV. And after that, I can combine these two patterns to do this project. So first thing, I filter my color. So I will get a noised image. So with this image, I have a problem that is the noise. So I search how can I clean noise from mask? And I just cleaned it. And after that, I can arrive in my rectangle, you know? So with this, the first thing is detect the patterns. The patterns is the key for you choose your techniques.
That's great, thanks.
You're welcome.
I don't think, let me see, I don't think we have any other questions. What is maybe your next step after that? What do you think you're gonna do after that? Because you have really surprises with some really great talks. So what's the next one thing that you have in mind?
I don't know. I'm thinking I'm in a hard time, and I'm not building new talks. But I guess I'm thinking talk about Islam. Islam for me, it's a little bit complex to resume it in a simple talk. But for me, it's a super interesting topic, and I love it. And I believe that I will talk more about it in the future.
Do you have any questions to ask to Abby? Because Abby asked you some questions. Do you have anything to ask about PS6 and about statistics? No? And I would like to thank you, both of you, for joining us today. And as you know, we are under really strange circumstances. And our meetups and both of you entertain the people while they have to sit at home and protect themselves and protect everyone else. I hope you stay healthy and don't forget, everyone, you have to wear your mask and keep your distances. I hope we are able to come back in a face-to-face event and see you both and presenting in front of a live audience. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having us. It's been really great.
Thank you.
It's the same. Thank you very much for the invite.